Well, tomorrow, state lawmakers wrap up their legislative session. This morning, our 9 News legal expert, Whitney Traylor, joins us to look at some of the most important bills. Good morning. Thanks for coming in.
Sure. Good to be here. Good morning.
Lot to go over. So
What
major bills does the legislature still have to address by the end of the session tomorrow?
Well, there's a number that they have to address. Which ones they'll actually get to, I'm not sure. But one that's really important, I know to Governor Polis, is the Yes in God's Backyard, which would allow these churches to allow residential housing and so it would override local zoning ordinances. So that one hasn't been resolved. I know that's like sort of his pet project. The rideshare safety bill, that's the one where Uber is threatening to pull out of the state if it passes. So they're still dealing with that. And that one really addresses various safety measures that the rideshare would have to take, video, audio, recording, things like that. And then there's an immigration bill that the Democrats are really trying to push forward that would disallow cooperation between state and local authorities and federal ICE authorities. So and there's a number of others. I mean, there's still wage theft by employers. They're dealing with AI legislation, union rights, so under the Labor Peace Act. So there's a lot of really important things they have to try and resolve by tomorrow at 11:59 p.m.
Yeah, time is ticking. So there were also some vetoes from this term. There was almost a veto override as well.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about the process and what transpired from those.
Yeah, and so going back to Civics 101, the veto process, and this is all kind of the checks and balances, just like our federal government. So the state government has the same process where the legislature proposes this legislation. The governor can then either sign it into law or veto it. If he vetoes it, then the legislature, both houses, can override that veto with a 2/3 majority. So that whole process is the checks and balances, just like our federal government. It's a beautiful process. The governor does vetoes regularly, that's not uncommon, but a veto override where 2/3 of the houses say, no, governor, we disagree, we're going to override your veto. The last time that happened, I think, was 2011 with Hickenlooper. And so there were two issues: the social media regulation bill, which the Senate actually did vote to override that veto. The House chose not to, so that veto stood. And then just this week, there was the Open Records Act, and the governor vetoed that, saying he didn't like different timelines for the public versus the journalists. And there was discussion about overriding that veto, and then they essentially tabled it. So both of those vetoes will stand, but we came close to an override, which is unique.
How interesting is that? Okay, so from a legal perspective, what stood out to you about this term and the laws that were created?
Well, I think one thing was the tone. This may not necessarily be a legal perspective, but last year's legislature was just really divisive, and they had trouble they were censoring each other, and it was just a mess. So this year, they seem to be working together more harmoniously. Another issue that they had to deal with was protections against the federal government. And it's really interesting what you're seeing, because you have this notion of federalism on the one hand, which says federal law overrides state law.
Right.
But then you have this notion, especially after the Dodd's decision, where everybody's saying, "Oh, states' rights, let it be up to the states." And so you're kind of seeing this this dogma between those two kind of ideas. And so I think our legislature enacted a number of bills to sort of counteract what the federal government was doing, like enshrining abortion rights and things of that nature. So that was interesting. I think the other thing that stood out is the name, image, and likeness bills that passed, because that train is already moving. I mean, these athletes are going to be paid to be able to use their name, image, and likeness, so to do camps and to do endorsements and things like that. And it just makes sense when you're looking at this billion-dollar industry. So we did pass some laws related to the state schools on name, image, and likeness, so they can now get paid. So those were some of the, and there were some consumer protections, which is really good. I think between the legislature and AG Weiser, there's been a number of consumer protections against these big corporations, and I think that's another trend that we're seeing, is these major corporations and people power. So that's why you'll see protests, union activity, all these things where we come together to sort of, fight the man.
Yeah, fight the man. A lot going on, and as
Yeah.
you mentioned, not a lot of time left in this session to
Right.
figure it all out. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens from here.
2 more days, yeah.
Whitney, thank you.
Sure thing.